You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 598, Renaissance Man.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we inhabit an episode of Star Trek, moment by moment, character by character, and see if the experience will reveal morals, meanings, and messages to us. Then we ask if it stands the test of time.
This week, Renaissance Man, the one where the Doctor goes rogue, disobeys the Captain, and hides a few of his fellow crewmates in the morgue. But it's all for a good reason. We promise.
John will be back with trivia in a moment, but first, here's how all of you can reach us. We'd love to hear from you. Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Find us on Facebook at Mission Log Pod and on Instagram and Threads at Roddenberry Podcasts. The conversation always continues in the Mission Log Discord with near-daily live events and 24/7 chat about the topics you love. Get your invitation to our private server by joining patreon.com/missionlog. While you're at it, one of the most important ways to help your favorite podcasts is to leave a 5-star rating and a review at Apple or your preferred podcast platform. And remember, your comments could be used on the show. And now here's John Champion with this week's Trivia AI.
Right. This is good. Yes, trivia for Renaissance Man. Matt, we were already the penultimate episode of Voyager, and the honors here go to a story by Andrew Shepard Price and Mark Gaberman. And this writing pair are both at the end of their 5-episode run of Star Trek contributions, all on Voyager. And we met them way back in season 2 when they sold the story that would become Tuvix. Now, the teleplay is by Phyllis Strong and Mike Sussman, and we know now that Mike had contributed his first Trek story back in Voyager Season 2 as well, and then he joined the writing staff full-time for Season 7. He and Phyllis had collaborated before, but it was for this episode that the two earned their positions as staff writers on Enterprise. So, Brandon Braga let them know that their writing assignment for this episode of Voyager was to be followed by a vacation and then right back to work for the next series. This was directed by Mike Vehar. The last time we talked about Mike's directorial work, it was for the episode Friendship 1. We are at the end of his 13-episode voyage on Voyager, obviously, but he does jump over to Enterprise for 10 more episodes there. Let's meet our guest stars. You may have noticed there's no Neelix, even though Ethan's name is in the credits, which is usually how this kind of thing goes. If you're a regular, even if you're not in the episode, your name still goes in the credits. That's how the contract works. And alas, poor Vorik, I knew him, Horatio, a Vulcan of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. He hath been on this voyage 1,000 times, and now how absent in my imagination he is, well, because this is the end of the road for his character. Alexander had fully 8 appearances on Voyager as Vorik, and that doesn't count his prior Trek appearances going all the way back to TNG. He even appeared as another Vulcan, Tarek, in the episode Lower Decks, and even outside of TV, Alexander performed in roles for Star Trek video games. As of this episode, Alexander has no more Trek credits. Thus far. And while we're pointing out recurring characters, it's time to give special mention to Tarek Ergen, who appears here not named as Ayala, but he has been for so many episodes. And he actually gets some dialogue here, too, which is a nice way to honor his many Voyager appearances, sometimes as Ayala, sometimes in character work where he is unrecognizable, like when he was Satan's robot in a few of the Captain Proton stories. He has over 120 appearances in the Trek franchise, and he will be back for more in Enterprise. The intimidating alien hologram form taken by the Doctor at various points is played by David Sparrow. This is David's first and only Trek appearance. He is English-born, raised in Canada, and his professional acting career started with Toronto's Second City Group, and soon after, he started taking on roles in feature films like The Santa Claus and National Lampoon's Senior Trip. Many more film and TV roles followed, his appearance on Voyager including recurring stints on Monk and She's the Mayor, along with numerous voice acting roles in animated series. And finally, we meet two new members of a hierarchy, and these two actually have names. The superior is Zet, and he's played by Wayne Thomas York, who is also making his sole Star Trek appearance. Wayne is also Canadian, and he's got an extensive background in live theater and television that brought him to LA in the early 90s. His guest appearances range from Felicity to Boston Legal to VIP to The West Wing. Wayne also co-starred in the 90s family series AJ's Time Travelers, in which he played both the father and the dog. In recent years, Wayne has worked as a location manager for numerous films and TV shows. The younger subordinate, Nar, is played by Andy Milder, and we have met Andy before when he was on DS9 in the episode Impact Noor as the Bolian Bokta. At the time, we mentioned Andy's work in a couple of notable feature films like Apollo 13 and Frost Nixon, in addition to his extensive voice work. In recent years, Andy voiced The Thing in the Spidey and His Amazing Friends animated series, and you probably also caught him in a recurring role as Ensign Bolivar on The Orville.
Welcome to the shallow end of the Delta Quadrant. I'll gladly pay you next Tuesday if you can spare a warp core today.
Prologue. Aboard the Delta Flyer, the Doctor multitasks, singing, flying, composing, photographing nebula, boasting that being holographic beats being human. Sleep-deprived, Janeway orders coffee. Black. Their banter halts as the shuttle jolts through a subspace eddy. Gripping the controls, Janeway hears the Doctor quip, "Never fear, the hologram is here." Act 1. In engineering, Vorik and B'Elanna wrestle with plasma surges while Tom Paris tries to sneak her away for a surprise Shuttle Bay picnic, complete with potato salad, extra paprika, and all under the romantic glow of a giant red star. Sorry, Tom. Like piloting, timing is everything, and today's duty wins. B'Elanna sticks to her promise to get the engines shipshape before Janeway's return. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Harry picks up a strange transmission from the Delta Flyer, an energy pulse pinging its transceiver array. A little tinkering later, and a flickering Janeway appears on screen. She reports an attack by a hostile race called the Recall, says she and the Doctor are fine, and tells Harry to have Chakotay meet her when she docks. But something's off. In her ready room, Janeway claims Voyager's been trespassing through Recall space for 3 weeks. These eco-zealots believe warp travel tears holes in subspace, and their solution? Voyager must surrender its warp core. To Chakotay's disbelief, Janeway agrees, saying she's tired of the endless struggle. He protests, but she cuts him off cold, ordering him not to discuss it with the crew. Moments later, Janeway drops another odd order. She wants B'Elanna to modify the Delta Flyer's tractor beam to tow the warp core. B'Elanna's instincts flare up, but she complies. When Chakotay confronts Janeway again on the bridge, she claims she's not feeling well and ducks out, leaving him with more questions than answers. Concerned, Chakotay checks with the Doctor. No medical issues detected. But when he finally corners Janeway in her quarters, her story unravels. The tone, the logic, the coldness. This isn't Catherine. Then the trap is sprung. Janeway seals the room with a dampening field, and after a brief struggle, drops Chakotay with a hypo spray. Act 2. After stashing a stunned Chakotay in the morgue like a secret she hopes no one finds, Janeway, finger quotes, struts into sickbay, props a foot up on the desk, and there it is, the mobile emitter, gleaming on her ankle. The jig is up. Our captain is actually the Doctor. Let me explain. No, there's too much. Let me sum up. In a brief exchange with the Doctor's puppet masters, we learn that Janeway is being held hostage by Zet and Nar, two hierarchy pirates who want to trade her life for Voyager's warp core. To make matters worse, they've got the Doctor on a short electronic leash through his own sensors. He can't even blink without them knowing. The Doctor manages a quick conversation with Janeway, and she gives him the one order she always does in these situations: don't give in. But Zet isn't done bargaining. Now he wants Voyager's bioneural gel packs too. Hearing his captain loud and clear, the Doctor makes the one choice he's learned from 7 years among humans: do what's right by his captain and crew. Meanwhile, Janeway's not just sitting around waiting to be rescued. She's working her captors, planting seeds of doubt, poking at their fragile alliance. Nar starts to crack, but Zet's too far gone. He's got a plan, a buyer, and a schedule to keep. Back on Voyager, things spiral into holographic chaos. The Doctor impersonates Chakotay, B'Elanna, even Janeway herself, juggling lies faster than a Ferengi accountant at tax season. Tom nearly blows his cover when he surprises Hollow B'Elanna with yet another romantic picnic. Geez, is Tom ever on duty? And when Harry finally uncovers the truth, Halote drops him with a hypo spray. One more crewmate down, one more body in the morgue, and the Doctor's web of deception is only getting tighter. Act 3. The Doctor tries to unwind with the Blue Danube, feet up at his desk, comm badges stacked like trophies from his latest misadventures. Suddenly, Inspector Tuvok arrives with a discrepancy in the deflector dish transmission, exposing the Doctor's involvement. The Doctor feigns ignorance, but, bro, this is Inspector Tuvok you're dealing with. You're mucking with a G here. Tuvok phasers out a holo emitter as the Doctor parkours out of sickbay, Mission Impossible style, mobile emitter in tow. Tom coordinates a ship-wide hunt as Tuvok Sam Gerards the Doctor into the holodeck, only to find dozens of Doctors waiting for him. Tuvok has B'Elanna cut the holodeck's power, forcing the real Doctor to escape into a Jeffries tube. Making his way back to engineering, Halote convinces B'Elanna that a warp core breach is imminent. But he's outed by Tom's sensor trap, confirming his location. Too late. He traps B'Elanna with force fields, activates his emergency command hologram protocols, and ejects the warp core while making a hasty retreat to the shuttle bay, where Tuvok once again has him cornered. Round 3. Fight. The Doctor leaps over the Vulcan, steals his phaser, and stuns him. Using the Delta Flyer's tractor beam, he hauls the ejected warp core toward the Hierarchy ship. Meanwhile, Janeway notices Nar tinkering with obsolete engine parts. They strike up a conversation. She helps him optimize a repair, and he shares dreams of a spare parts outpost. Janeway even suggests B'Elanna might be interested in his inventory. Zet interrupts, drawing their attention to the approaching Delta Flyer. When the Doctor reaches the kidnapper's vessel, the Overlookers change the plan. And Janeway is quick to remind the Doctor that no matter how noble his intention, he really should have followed her orders. If he did, at least Voyager would still have her warp core, if not her captain. And now, Voyager has neither. Act 4. Eventually, Tom finds Chakotay and Harry in the morgue, alive, and not in the Chicago way. B'Elanna manages to restart the impulse drive as an altered version of the Blue Danube starts playing on every comm channel. At first, the crew assumes the strangely off-key recording is damaged, and Chakotay tries to pause it, but the computer won't comply. The audible anomaly is puzzling. The Doctor had performed the piece flawlessly only a month earlier at his recital. Inspector Tuvok logics it out. The Doctor altered it on purpose, and Seven's Fourier analysis confirms their suspicions. The off-key notes are a signal hiding warp signatures embedded within the music, undetectable by surveillance. Following it, they pinpoint the alien's location, 6.7 light-years away. Meanwhile, on the Overlooker ship, Janeway is plotting escape. She tries to amplify the Doctor's matrix to disrupt the force field, but he keeps apologizing for the chaos he's caused. Janeway cuts him no slack. This isn't time for sentimental crises. Enter Nar, one of the Overlookers, who uploads the Doctor's first assignment: infiltrate a hierarchy surveillance base and steal data. It sounds straightforward, but in practice, it begins destabilizing the Doctor's main program. His matrix flickers, threatening to collapse under the strain. The stakes are higher than ever. The Doctor is walking a tightrope between heroics, survival, and total system failure, all while the Voyager crew is racing 6+ light years behind him. Act 5. Tom and Tuvok track the Overlooker ship in a shuttle as Nar tinkers with the Doctor's tenor, turning him into either a soldier or a spy, all the while warning Zet that the Doctor's matrix is destabilizing and he might decompile soon. Tuvok opens fire on the Overlooker's vessel and Tom beams over into the Delta Flyer, breaking into it yet again. Zet orders Nar to fire on both ships. Nar hesitates but complies, suggesting they simply return the warp core and leave. Zet goes along, but not before attempting to arm a torpedo to destroy the core, which would have killed Voyager's crew in the blast, shocking even Nar. A stray hit damages the force field, freeing Janeway and the Doctor, who subdue Zet and secure the warp core. Zet continues to fight the Doctor, but in a surprising twist, Nar helps by knocking Zet out, ending the confrontation. Back on Voyager, the crew rushes to the holodeck to stabilize the Doctor's program, but not before he delivers several cringe-worthy yet heartfelt deathbed confessions. B'Elanna quickly deletes the Doctor's excess subroutines, and the Doctor survives, albeit thoroughly embarrassed. Later, Janeway visits him in sickbay, reminding him that his friends have missed him. After teasing him with a sick day's sickbay confinement as punishment for his antics, but acknowledging he's already spent the week there, she invites him to join her in the holodeck for coffee at a Buenos Aires outdoor cafe. One condition: leave rank at the door, and absolutely no opera. The end.
All right. Nicely done on the recap, Norman. And tip of the hat to Brian De Palma. I have a feeling I know what movie was on your mind as you sat down for this one.
Well, it brought back one of the greatest Renaissance actors of all time. That would be Sir Sean Connery.
Exactly.
Yeah. In like the prologue, it's weird. Like the prologues are very short this entire season, like in season 7.
It's kind of weird. I feel like even though Brannon was not super close to production because he was already working on Enterprise, I feel like this is one of his kind of thumbprints on the show. Is we're just going to get those teasers down as small as we possibly can.
Yep. In the trivia, you said that Ethan's name was still in the credits, and I was just wondering, in the opening scene, the prologue, if anyone was going to mention Neelix. And since he wasn't, I'm wondering if he was just Libby rated from the crew's memory.
Oh my God. Remind me who
I have no shame saying that.
You have no idea. Nicely done. Nicely done. Another thing nicely done here. I really like this practical effect. It's so subtle but nice. Janeway walking toward the replicator and her body is obscuring the dispenser. And then she walks away with a cup of coffee. So it's just, it's a practical. It's a thing you have on set. Oh, look, the cup is there. She's just turned to hide it, gives the order, coffee black. You hear the sound effect. And then she turns around with the coffee. It's great. It's so dead simple.
A block is really good. Yeah. There's a line that I thought was funny. The Doctor says, "I'd never admit this to anyone else, but there was a time when I would have given anything to be flesh and blood. But I've come to realize that being a hologram is far superior." I said to myself, how very Alfred Bester of you. That's for all of my Babylon 5 fans out there, and for Walter Koenig as well.
B5, yep. All right. He has this line, "Relax, you've got a hologram at the helm." And I was wondering, is that the same thing as an autopilot, or does the shuttle already have an autopilot? So then do you need the hologram to be at the helm? Or do autopilots just get replaced with holograms? Because you know what's in my head. What's in my head is the guy airplane.
Yep.
If rock. Yeah. It's like, no, autopilot is a thing. It's just built in. But no, in airplane, he's inflatable and he actually occupies a seat. That is the Doctor now.
Funny scene.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Man, I really like Vorik, and I'm sorry to see Alexandra Enberg not get used as much in the show as he should have. Nice to have a scene with him, but, I feel like there's a lot more to explore with him and many other characters on Voyager who didn't get their due.
So here's something that struck me interesting when you were doing the trivia. Taurik is spelled Taurik. Vorik is spelled Vorik, but phonetically they're the same. So is it possible that they could have been Vulcan twins? It could have been spelled Vaurik just the same, or Torik just the same.
Oh, I like that bit of headcanon. Honestly, I like the idea that he's the same guy and he just changed his name.
Right?
So, could be.
Speaking of all these wonderful cameos, I wonder if we'll ever get another cameo of either Samantha Wildman or Baxter or Carrie. Oh, no, Carrie, no.
No, too soon. Too soon. Hey, Tal Celeste, anybody? But at least we got Ayala. At least we got Vorik in here. Tom's menu: replicated potato salad and fried chicken. I'm fine with that. That all sounds very good to me. And Tom, honestly, look, dude, pretty obvious in that little call to get B'Elanna away from work. I don't know whether to cringe or to clap, but
the fried chicken was kind of chewy when
it looked
into it.
I thought it was just a prop. I thought it was like a rubber prop at first. If you took a bite out of it, I was like, oh,
right.
Really?
Yeah. We've mentioned like when Seven and Chakotay in Human Air, when they were cooking, they can see like, we need 0.5 milligrams of salt. So exactly how much extra paprika is extra when it's replicated? Wouldn't you put like 0.5 milligrams of extra paprika?
That's a good question. You have to be very specific with a replicator.
Yeah, because I know what extra black pepper means to me. That means like basically your arms fall off when you're grinding a pepper grinder, right? I love those big bazooka ones, though. The ones that you got to like basically take,
that's
over the shoulder.
Yeah.
Love those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. By the way, there's a whole chapter in one of my favorite books, The Encyclopedia of Bad Taste, about pepper grinders. So, yeah, check it out, folks. Again, mentioned Ayala. It's so good to just give him words. Just give him something to say now that we're saying goodbye to him.
And he's in red. He's in Command Red.
Well, and that's the thing, that he's not named Ayala in here, and actually in the credits, he's just Helm or something else, very generic. And I feel like that's just kind of a product of the time. Like now, especially with a show like Star Trek, you name everybody, even if you never hear from them again, and they are somewhat known, at least in kind of the background materials, even if they don't get explored. But
is he the emergency Ayala hologram then?
He might be. He might be exactly that. Yeah. Hey, we got more of Captain Harry. This is good. That's something to write home about. It's a big chair. Well, it was nice to see him in the chair, and at least he can tell his mom again. Yeah, I got to be in command of Voyager.
Oh, but in midnight shift, not regular shift.
It's space. It's space. There's no midnight in space.
Not Korean moms, dude. I'm telling you.
Exactly. I really like this moment of Chakotay just quietly questioning Janeway's decision while they're sitting next to each other on the bridge. Of course, we don't know the reveal yet about Janeway, but it's a nice moment to have him do that.
His suspicions intensified. So, this wasn't that long ago. Literally, it's an episode ago. So, Janeway said to Tom in Natural Law, remember, you have to comply with local law. Understood?
Right.
And in this episode, Janeway says, as punishment, their law demands that our ship be dismantled. She's talking about the recall. And Chakotay says, obviously, we're not going to let that happen. So, I guess you don't have to comply if you don't want to?
I guess not. That's the way. Look, you never know what you're going to get with Voyager.
So, but the thing is, it was kind of leading because you're like, that's a little on the nose, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were definitely already indicating, kind of winking to the audience for sure. Now, I love this bit in Astrometrics. Chakotay asks Seven if she can detect cloaked ships. So, like, let me just boil that down for you. Like, hey, if there's something invisible, can you make it visible? Like, and here's the thing. If that were the case, wouldn't you just do that all the time?
Borg vision. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you just if you could detect cloaked ships, just make that part of the sensors all the time. That seems like important information to know.
Nanoprobes. Yeah. It's all about the nanoprobes.
Mm-hmm. Right? It is.
So I loved it when Chakotay said, Catherine, on the bridge in full company. I'm like, ooh, you don't use that kind of tone and that kind of familiarity, when there's something not right.
Yeah. And then when we cut to their quarters, nice camera work in this confrontation between Chakotay and fake Janeway, kind of that moving camera around them, building up that tension in the room. Really nice stuff.
I mean, I know that, we understand, the Doctor's story is complicated at this time, but it's just strange to me that, again, these are those kind of like these leading hints where you kind of question, like, okay, so Janeway's walking around, the Doctor's back, and the Doctor doesn't report in that Janeway was interrogated.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't kind of like the one thing, like, hey, our captain was compromised. Maybe you should have a real conversation with her. But we all know what's going on.
Oh, right.
It was just a little weird.
Yeah.
So what's the Loth? He threatens to destroy Voyager if they don't hand over the warp core. Here's the thing about these kind of threats. So if they don't hand over the warp core and destroy Voyager, the warp core is also destroyed.
Yeah.
So go ahead, fire, bro.
Yeah. The criminal mind, especially when being made up by somebody who is not a criminal, maybe just not thinking things through, I guess. Yeah. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Have we seen the morgue before? I don't remember if we did. And it's a pretty interesting set. And it did make me wonder, like, how long in real time this episode takes place, because how long will Chakotay just stay unconscious in there? And by the way, will he be warm enough? Because I wouldn't think so.
That's the Chakotay way.
Send one of theirs.
That's right. If there's a level 5 dampening field around the morgue before Janeway accesses the locker to put Chakotay in there, how can she beam Chakotay into the locker when the force field's up?
Right. Okay. Another good question. Yeah. And like many good questions, look, Janeway is giving the Doctor a direct order. I think we'll come back to this, whatever is his state of mind. And finally in this episode, we have proof the Doctor can use the mobile emitter under his clothes or in a different location than on his shoulder, because there's so many instances where it's like, oh yeah, well, that's the Doctor. He's got the emitter right there. Like, no, you can hide it.
I wish he hid it in the heel of his shoe. I wanted some Maxwell smartness going on there.
A little gut slide action there. That would have been good. Yeah. I do like our hierarchy members here. And of course the Nar saying, you're doing a wonderful job. It's just nice to get a little positive encouragement.
Oh, they're so polite. I love those guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the Doctor turns into Halote, right? And he's sitting there at his desk. And then he had Chakotay's comm badge on the desk. And then he turns into Chakotay with the and he was the Doctor. When he was the Doctor, he had his own comm badge. When he turns into hologram Chakotay, he doesn't have the comm badge.
Oh, right.
Why just Chakotay with a comm badge?
Chakotay with a comm badge. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I do love this bit with Janeway talking to her captors about the Doctor and about how, he's already 3 steps ahead of you. It was a very Last Crusade moment of Endy talking about Marcus Brody. He speaks a dozen languages. He knows every custom that you'll never catch him, Cut to Marcus Brody. Excuse me, does anyone speak English?
There's no music that Tic-Tac-Tees. Run. Yes. Yeah, that's good stuff. So if the Doctor is using the Captain's voice, why doesn't he use Chakotay's voice when he was talking to Tuvok earlier?
I know, that was a weird choice.
It's just,
yeah, like he didn't know how to do that in that moment. He had to download the program.
Yeah, inconsistent.
A clever little moment, though, to adjust the hologram to B'Elanna's pregnancy.
Yeah.
Like, that was a good moment. And honestly, throughout, the effects of transitioning from one hologram to another are very good.
Yeah, usually there's weird camera blocking, the way that actors, like, either they're right next to each other or have to move around each other. I thought that in this day and age, in the technology, like in 2001, they've kind of already mastered that. So
yeah. But at the time, I feel like you're getting a lot of bad kind of morphing effects, and this felt more genuine in universe. Like, it looked good, it was instant, it just made sense.
Does Tom just walk around surprising B'Elanna with like flash mob picnics all the time?
This is one move. This is all you
Hey,
got.
look, surprise! Is it a picnic? How do you know? Right? So yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. And by the way, as soon as we teased it at the beginning about the surprise picnic and he's calling her into the shuttle, I knew that we had to have a moment between real Tom and hologram B'Elanna.
Right.
Like, you're just setting us up for that.
Right. I did like the reference to that, the photonic displacement effect that they used all the way back in Repression to isolate the killer in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, nice little tie-in, call back to that episode.
Yeah, that was good stuff. And now we've got Harry in the morgue, I guess, for the rest of the episode. And honestly, I thought, well, the doctor knows everything about how the ship works. He is an extension of the ship's computer. And yes, I know that maybe his program is siloed a bit, but he's got access to everything, and he instantly knows how all of it works. Right. He could have just come back and knocked everybody out, used a phaser stun sweep, used some sort of knockout gas. Everybody could have been in the morgue, or, some other cool dry place.
Right.
So, yeah. I really thought the Doctor is giving off some serial killer vibes in this one scene at the beginning of Act 3. He's got that collection of comm badges, and he's just kicking back listening to Blue Danube. Like, that was creepy.
Right.
That was a little weird, And then finally, we get some security Tuvok.
Right.
And he will blow up all your hollow emitters. Do not test him.
Exactly.
Because he will do that.
Yeah. Inspector Tuvok.
Great effect of the Doctor jumping through the wall to his office. I thought that was awesome.
That was like one of the most extreme action stunts I've seen in Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I said, that it was like Mission Impossible parkour style.
Yeah. Super good. I do like leading into the holodeck, and the room just full of duplicate doctors is a nice little diversion. Very clever, again, just using the technology.
What happened to that multi-beam, like, phaser maneuver that Tuvok had, like, earlier?
I know.
Because you could, like, shoot everyone, like, in that room, right?
Yeah. I do like the bit of misdirection to see fake Chakotay come in and take command, and then him become the ECH. Right. Like, all of this played out. It just, like, built tension very well.
So I'm like, okay, so the Doctor learns how to place force fields around people in engineering because he's Data.
Yeah. That's how it works.
Exactly.
Yeah, they shared notes at some point. Yeah. Another nice bit, a good bit here with the Doctor as B'Elanna climbing up a wall to get past Tuvok. That weird kind of just, okay, he's hologram. He can kind of do anything.
It's very Matrixy. It's like, the Herosian had a point, right, about turning their holograms into prey, and then they can do these kind of things, right? Making them the ultimate, target.
By physics. Yeah. The Doctor has this very, impassioned line. Voyager can survive without a warp core, but it can't survive without a captain. And, look, I know we all love Janeway, but honestly, there are plenty of people on board Voyager who can be the captain. We could even come back to that idea, because we just saw another one in this episode, and his name is Harry Kim. He was in the big C.
Right.
You got a Chakotay, you got other people. So just saying, Oh, hey, and it's nice to finally find Harry and Chakotay in the morgue. Nothing creepy about that at all. I wonder, by the way, if anybody looked before they looked there on deck 17, but did Tuvok, did they ever bother to go check on those folks? There's no way they could be down here. And I thought very clever bit hiding the warp signature in a song. That was cool to see. Again, a little detective work going on with the rest of our crew to figure it
So
out.
I have to be honest. I had to look up the Fourier analysis. And for anyone who's not familiar with that, it breaks down complex waveforms into constituent sine, SINE, waves to reveal frequencies and amplitudes. So, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, it was a very smart thing for them to do. This bit, the Doctor and Janeway are trapped in this hierarchy brig. We should socialize more. I'm just like perfect timing in space jail to have this conversation.
So I love looking at the hollow emitter as a prop. Then I was like, okay, so Janeway's in there and she's modifying that and it has like no buttons and it has like some kind of like a very thin panel. I guess you can use your thumbnail to do that.
You know what? It made me think of Steve Jobs, who said, if you have to make the phone come with the stylus, and you've already lost. If like that's, and it's the same thing with the hollow emitter. Like if you have to have a tiny tool to get in there to make changes, like you've already failed.
That's so funny.
So
yeah. I did the math, and this was actually a literal 4-minute Act 4 timestamp.
It's tiny.
32 minutes, 25 seconds to 36 minutes, 36 seconds. It's the
wow.
I don't know if it is, but I think it's the shortest Act 4 we've seen so far.
You're probably right. Yeah, 2 and 3 are really doing the heavy lifting here for sure. And that takes us into Act 5, where we have a high action scene here. Now, look, a bit of convenient timing. Oh, look, the brig force field drops exactly when we need it to,
yeah.
And then Janeway and the Doctor can get out of there. But whatever, they cram a lot of that action into this very fast-paced scene.
I love that the Delta Flyer gets broken into again, even if it's its own people. And I know the Doctor can do pretty much almost anything except wrestle. Like, he doesn't know Kung Fu.
He should have that in his programming. Yeah. Now, we were all waiting for it because they kept indicating it earlier. Of course, the younger hierarchy alien Nar turns on his superior. Right. By the way, every time I say his name, I realize that is the Australian word for no, is Nar, if you didn't know that.
As in no or Dr. No?
No and Dr. No.
Oh, so yeah, Dr. Nar
would be Dr. Nar if he was in Australia. Yeah. And again, you mentioned that Act 4 is pretty short. Act 5, we wrap up everything pretty quickly here.
I mean, I do like the with Nar. Are you still interested in acquiring my inventory? So yeah, sure. Capitalism makes strange bedfellows in the Delta Quadrant.
There we go. Yeah, and then we've had some very comic moments in this weird episode, but then a bigger comic relief moment, the Doctor's heartfelt farewells. And I wonder how long that scene maybe had originally been written, if there were timing issues with this episode, because it feels like they really drag out every moment, and they could have dragged it out even further.
I mean, it's kind of sitcom-y, when you have that premature deathbed confession, then all of a sudden, like, the plane rights itself or the ship doesn't sink, and, everyone's like, so did you really mean all that stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Interesting shot in sickbay where the Doctor has been hiding out. He hasn't been socializing. And we see this shot. Janeway walks in, and it's just his shadow, just his silhouette on the wall. I don't think we've ever seen a shot like that in this show before. Pretty interesting, clever use of driving home how he has separated himself. And then, of course, pat on the back. The punishment here is coffee on the holodeck in Buenos Aires with the captain, and all is well. We'll get right back to Renaissance Man after a quick word from this week's sponsor.
You know what, John? I think I'm just being cautious here. I think it's safe to say that no one wants to feel like their every online move is being tracked by Section 31.
I don't want that for me or for anybody.
I mean, fortunately, Surfshark is back on the scene, giving you the power to protect your privacy with a simple tap.
Yes, they have. And you know what? I've been using Surfshark lately, the last several weeks, and a couple of things really stand out to me. Now, first of all, you can set trusted Wi-Fi networks, which is very cool. So if I'm at home or somewhere that I know is secure, Surfshark won't automatically connect. But everywhere else, like an airport or a hotel, it's like flipping on a personal cloaking device.
You know me. I hate dealing with ads. And if you're like me, Surfshark has built-in ad blocking features too. No extra plugins or extension. It just works, which means fewer distractions and fewer trackers following you around.
Oh, wait, another cool feature? Camouflage mode. It's designed to hide the fact that you're even using a VPN, which is especially useful in restrictive networks or regions. It's like surfing the net in stealth mode, ideal for staying private, even under closer scrutiny.
And of course, Surfshark covers unlimited devices with one account. Your phone, your laptop, your tablet, you name it. Another thing I really appreciate, though, it's just easy, right? I like easy. You just download the app, you log in, you tap the switch, and you're protected. That's it. You don't have to be a Starfleet engineer. You don't have to call Scotty to make it work.
No, of course not. He's got other things to do. So here's what you do. Go to surfshark.com/Star Trek or use the code StarTrek at checkout and get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. That link and the code, as always, are in our show notes.
So go boldly and browse privately with Surfshark.
They say dress for the job you want. The Doctor wanted everyone else's job this week.
Let's talk about the Doctor.
Let's do it.
I don't want to get into his punishment yet.
Okay.
We'll come back to that because I definitely have questions, you know. But the setup here of what's going on, like, I wonder if there is something to analyze here as a lesson or maybe lack of a lesson in leadership here. Mm-hmm. What the Doctor does is completely wrong. He violates every bit of protocol. There may have been plenty of other ways that this could have played out. Now, look, I know the episode is the episode that they wrote. This is the story that they are telling. This is the time that the Doctor chooses to do this thing. Therefore, we're telling the story. If you do it my way, then you don't have that story to tell. But we're really perpetuating one of Star Trek's most egregious sins here, which is somebody goes rogue because they think they're right. They defy not only the orders of their captain, but they get into this kind of subterfuge with their own crew, avoiding and actively hurting their own crew in order to do this thing that they think is really important. Mm-hmm. At what point does the doctors or the ECH, depending on how we want to look at them, at what point does the programming break down? At what point is he so inherently limited that he can't get back to Voyager and he's the hologram? Like, he can take any form that he wants, and even though he is being watched, he could literally, like, with his left hand be typing out a message on a tricorder to show to Chakotay and Tuvok. Here's what happened. Here's what's going on. I'm being monitored. The captain is being held by these weirdos again. There are other ways out of this, you know? Mm-hmm. So what I wondered is, for all the growth that we have seen in the Doctor, is his programming now just sort of overall, Dr. ECH, a Renaissance man, to, you know, quote the title here, is there some limit that the program doesn't get what to do in a complex situation, which is really just to get the upper hand with a couple of weirdos from the hierarchy? I mean, do they just retire the ECH at this point because, hey, look, Doctor, you actually defied your captain's orders. You didn't in the moment try to survive, get out of captivity, and get the upper hand, which apparently is the thing that Starfleet is supposed to do when they are captured. So, yeah, we've let the Doctor get away with a lot of stuff up until now. And here, this is the most egregious as we are counting down the minutes to the end of Voyager. The most egregious one, I'm just going like, maybe the ECH shouldn't be deployed. Maybe, maybe there is something really wrong here.
I didn't plan for this, but the way that you propose this, I have a counter argument for you.
Okay.
What if his decision-making process has actually, and everything that he's learned in terms of autonomy and humanity and how the crew will always find a way to rescue themselves because they're the only ones that can do it in the Delta Quadrant? What if it's not a question of how he can do it, but the examples that he has learned from the crew are what are influencing to do it? Because it's as if we're making a case for, you're saying that it's too dangerous for him to do it, but what if we're saying that he's reaching that level of sentient autonomy because he can choose to do it?
Yes, he can choose to do it, but if he were to put anybody else in that position, put Harry or Chakotay or Tom or Seven or anybody else in that position, would he or the programming that underlies his decisions think, oh yeah, what they will do is follow the orders of the hierarchy, go back to Voyager, knock out a bunch of fellow crew members, and deliver exactly what they want?
Well, it's about experience. He knows that he needs to do a thing. He just doesn't have the experience of subterfuge, of tactical planning, of all of these things that you need to learn in the course of being a Starfleet officer. You just can't put a comp badge on you and 4 pips and say, like, I am command rank. That takes a lot of studying, expertise, training, methodology. He can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that he can download all of the technical ability to do that. But why wouldn't he have done the same thing with, how do I handle a hostage situation? And I'm going to download the top 10 after action reports to learn how to do that.
I'm going to totally derail this and ask you if you think the 3 laws of robotics apply here. So I know that the Doctor is not technically a robot, but he is a programmed, manufactured intelligence, right? I would assume that there are certain fail-safe, certain underlying aspects of his program, not to mention the fact that he is a doctor, and first he must do no harm. So would those laws either prevent or compel him to do what he's doing here? So 3 laws of robotics: a robot may not injure a human being, or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. All right. 2, a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings specifically, okay, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And then the 3rd, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
Right.
Janeway is the human.
Right.
Janeway is the one who gave him the order.
Right.
Do this thing. I am telling you to do this thing. So is there, I may be defeating my own argument here, is there a calculation for the Doctor's programming that says, if I follow that order, that will cause harm?
Yeah, I think that there's like a conflict in what he's learned in terms of, again, the Asimov's 3 rules of robotics, right? So if you apply that, then that's one standard. And if he was just the actual hologram that was turned on, yes, I think that he would be able to follow those standards. But I think there are too many examples where he said, you know what? We've gone all the way back. We've gone back like 2 weeks of travel forward, to get out of the Delta Quadrant to save somebody. Yeah. That's on a moon somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? Isn't that what I'm supposed to be learning? Isn't that what it is to be a Starfleet officer? And let me put it to this way.
Okay.
Star Trek 3, right? Kirk is not supposed to go to Genesis. He's not, and he's defying every single Starfleet rule. I mean, Sykes says, it's like, Kirk, This is going to end your career. But Kirk said all the way back in Amok Time, Spock saved my life dozens times over. Isn't that worth a career? We can put this model to data lore or doctor lore, right? Remember the time when Spock single-handedly took over the Enterprise in the Menagerie? Or when Data took over the Enterprise D on any day that ends in Y?
Yeah.
Right? Or Vic Fontaine jumping from system to system on Deep Space Nine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this falls into that kind of tradition. I mean, but what we really need to figure out is ethically in this program, where is he in terms of his sentience? Because does the ECH, and we mentioned this before when he was originally brought up, like there's the doctor, that's the emergency medical hologram. Does the ECH, because it changes his uniform, it changes his rank and all that kind of stuff, does that override the Hippocratic oath and law of what he's supposed to do? Because both laws are pretty much the same. Do no harm. Yeah. The very first law, do no harm, or by inaction, allow harm to come to others. So,
well, but let's weigh out who is being harmed here, because you could make the argument that by following Janeway's order and going back to Voyager and not handing over the warp core, he is then protecting 143 or 140, however many other people are left on board. Mm-hmm. So they are the ones then who will not be harmed by having a warp core. They can get away.
Right.
Now, Janeway, I would not say that Janeway is expendable, but Janeway is the one making that call. So what does his underlying program not understand? That all those other people will be stranded in space if they don't have a warp core.
But that's only if he fails. And that's the thing, right? It could be done by either the doctor, or it could be done by Chakotay. It could be done by Tom.
Yeah.
They all have to factor everything in through the human filter. That, I think, is what the doctor is trying to do. Like, look, I bet you if Chakotay did it, he would succeed. Why can't I succeed? Because I have every possible way to succeed, but I didn't. And isn't that like the point of it? It's like to err as human, that he tried and he failed, and they're going to pay the consequence of it, because that's what being human is kind of all about, right? Yeah. That you think you're going to win and you don't. So what happens? Time travel back and make a mistake. Oh, wait, hold on a second. I can't do that. I can't get there yet. But it's like that. Like, you can't rely on, if something fails, I can reset button this. No, it's like, if it fails, it's you to blame.
Yeah, true. But I mean, here's the thing. How many times on Voyager has the lesson through a story been that you have to rely on the other people around you? And that's what's so interesting here, is that the Doctor, I guess, has not absorbed that, given the numerous times that other people, not just the captain, not just one person comes to his rescue or defense, but everybody, as the found family that is the crew on this ship, has worked together to go help him or somebody else, anybody else in need. That's what's so weird about his programming not picking that up. Because, again, there had to be a way to get back to Voyager and say, here's what's happening. Here's what we're going to do. Now at least everybody is in on it too.
I just kind of like want to leave this with a question. Like, when does coercion justify bending the rules? Can an artificial life form, the Doctor, be held to the same ethical standards as a human? I would say if his sole purpose is trying to be human, to try and gain that sentience, i.e. the measure of man, equation, then yes.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Being confined to sickbay, or sometimes Janeway saying like, no, you have to keep all of your programming because that's what makes you human. If there are consequences, this episode lands. I don't want to go further into it, but if there are consequences to his actions, then those are actionable items that the Doctor has to deal with.
Isn't that interesting though? Because, on a large scale, as we are recording this, there are ethical and moral questions about how we use AI in decision-making with all kinds of tasks, and essentially where we are now with AI, they are information collators. They're not good at original thought. They don't do that, right? But they do have a strength in analyzing large sets of data and being able to collate that information, right? Mm-hmm. But I've used this example before on Mission Log, I know, in a sense, like the AI computers that would make a decision for, say, self-driving cars, right? They have to make a moral decision at some point about making a turn, through action or inaction. Here we are back to the trolley problem.
Right.
Who gets hurt or who doesn't? Am I protecting the passenger in the vehicle or the two people who are in the other car that is driving recklessly? There are all kinds of situations like that. And even though statistically we may look at that and say, well, there are far fewer incidents of a road death when an AI, an automated driving system is in place than there ever will be if it's 100% humans on the road. But we still can't accept that idea that AI might make a decision that we may not like at some point.
Human decision required,
Human decision required, right? But we're more okay with ourselves making a bad decision than we are with an automated system making a bad decision, even though that automated system can learn from every example in the world, every example that ever occurred, and still make a decision based on best possible outcome. But again, best carries with it a moral value here.
Right.
So the Doctor and his underlying program is in this similar space here. Okay, well, now I get to decide who is going to be hurt by my decision, who is going to be saved by my decision. And I feel what we're leading up to here, which is, you just said the C word, which is consequence. Once that decision is made, is there a consequence? How does that consequence play out? And is that consequence different because he has manufactured intelligence, not a naturally occurring intelligence?
I mean, speaking of consequence, I'd like to pivot just a little bit into something I thought was really interesting in terms of the ethics of part of this episode. And I'm going to ask you a question, John. Ever dance with the Doctor in the pale moonlight?
Wow. I like that mashup. That's
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah,
so there's a quote here that really kind of like struck a nerve. It was towards the end. The Doctor said during his deathbed confession, quote unquote, "I kept a record of what I considered to be your most questionable command decisions. It's in my personal database. I hope you'll delete the file without reading it." What? If after Janeway reads the file, is she supposed to look at the camera, raise a glass of whiskey, Cisco style, and say, erase that entire personal log? Because here's to the good guys, right? I mean, what does that mean? You know me, I have and I'm going to make a shout out to Dubs, because I love Deep Space Nine as a concept and as a production execution, but I have severe ethical issues with In the Pale Moonlight. And
it will haunt us forever.
Yes, because of this question. You can't just take a log, which is supposed to be forwarded to Starfleet for review, and just summarily dismiss everything. That means everything that the Doctor questioned, Tuvix, all of the things that the Doctor said, that the Doctor actually probably used for his book that turned Janeway into Jenkins. He's saying, now I just delete it all. But that's the thing. You are a living record of like everything that went on the starship with everybody.
Yeah.
So ethically, how can you say, whatever? Like, how can you do that?
Apparently he can.
Yeah, apparently he can. Right.
Yeah. But that's an interesting thing. Again, it's the computer doesn't forget. And not only does the computer not forget, this particular computer that underlies the Doctor's programming has made judgment calls on the captain's behavior. And it goes into a pile of good call or a pile of questionable, ethically dubious, and it doesn't forget. And I guess it can then use that to justify, if we ever saw a follow-up, any kind of consequence of this, it can use that in a conversation over coffee in a holodeck Buenos Aires to say, yeah, I defied your order here because here are all these other examples that I learned from you defying orders or breaking rules or bending protocol because of the outcome that you wanted.
I mean, technically, the Doctor is a living log for Voyager ever since he got turned on, right?
Sure. A living witness, one might say.
Well done. Applause +1.
Thank you.
Put that on record. But still, he's there. He records this information. He records his own logs, all these things, and they're in his database. And we have argued that, the Doctor is, by and large, an extension of the computer itself, right?
Yeah.
Basically, to make a finer point, who remembers, John? Pepperidge Farm Mode remembers.
If a guy who basically looks like a potato singes his fingers, does he have French fry fingers now? Romulans have sub-commanders. Do these guys have spud commanders?
So let's see, John. We're podcasters. We also do a little bit of improv. We do a little bit of our own writing creatively. We do our own scripting. Sometimes we impersonate. Sometimes we sing. Sometimes we juggle.
Sure.
That makes us Renaissance men.
Oh, I'm in such good company.
Right?
Yes. Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
But that's plural. And what we're talking about is, if I may, William Shatnerize it, Renaissance man.
Right.
Here at the end of Mission Log. And what we do here, we take a look to see if the episode holds up based on our discussion. And then we try and see if we were able to find any morals, meanings, or messages in this episode. And I'm really interested to see where we land. Because this was quite the interesting episode for and let's be fair, not just the penultimate episode of the season 7. This is the penultimate episode of the series.
The series. I know. And I have to tell you, man, and we say it almost every time, like, it's such a joy to do this kind of show where we don't read each other's notes and we do have room to improvise, and the conversation gets to take a wholly different route than maybe we anticipated before we sat down to record. Mm-hmm. Because I really enjoyed our conversation, and I really enjoyed the ideas that we picked out of each other about AI and about responsibility and about consequence and about command and leadership and all of these things that come up from the episode. I also really like that you and I picked up on the same technical breakthroughs in this episode. It is a well-produced episode when it comes to using effects in a way that are beneficial to the story, that don't just put a halt to things, but you kind of go back and watch and go, wow, they did nice stuff here. There's good visual effects. There's good blocking. There's good camera work. The moments that we have action, I feel like those scenes don't overstay their welcome. They really kind of pick up the pace, and they move along pretty well. And there are some good performances in here. So I have to admit that this episode is fun on the rewatch. And especially if you go back and look at the little tells among the crew when they're being played by the Doctor.
Right.
So, when it's the Doctor inhabiting the Janeway hologram or the Chakotay hologram, like that's fun stuff. And it's not the same as, Jerry Ryan performing as the Doctor inhabiting Seven in Body and Soul. But there are all these fun, some very subtle and some very obvious differences in each actor's performance when they are playing the Doctor's holographic version of themselves. Right? Like, that's cool. That's cool to go back and watch. And sometimes it's a little, maybe like a hesitation in how they react, like they're trying to figure out how to react, right? Sometimes it's just a word choice. And you would think that a computer would be better at all of this, but I guess it's not, because the Doctor at this point, he is wholly his own thing. And he's also a bit of a mystery, So I think some very clever stuff is happening here in execution. As far as this kind of episode goes, it's a well done one. And we as the audience, we get to keep guessing, and we get to have this fun along the way with the tension in the Doctor's decisions and not knowing fully what he's up to and not knowing fully how this will play out. So it is very successful in that. That said, even though this is a good version of the kind of story it is, I don't like it overall. And maybe it's because I don't like where it is. As we have said, this is the penultimate episode of Voyager. We're literally wrapping up 7 years next week. Could we have not gotten something more poignant, something more introspective, something that has any bearing on the journey so far and where we're going next? Again, look, there's so much that I like. I like these weirdos from the hierarchy. I think all the performances are great. I think there's a lot of clever creativity in this episode, but could we have done this at any other point in the last 2-3 seasons? 1,000% yes. It feels so out of place here. And that is super disappointing to me. So I can't say that it holds up unless maybe you just watch it completely out of order. And that's too bad. It feels like Much Ado About Nothing here. Mm-hmm. And I mean that in the literal sense, not that it's like the play.
Right. Yeah. Does it hold up as an episode versus does it hold up where it is? As the
It marginally holds up as an episode. I would say the only reason that it doesn't is because, again, we've been in this kind of situation before. Yeah. And if we're going to revisit this kind of situation again, let's have some new consequences. Let's have some new growth to come out of it and a reason to go down that path again. But as you pointed out, we've been down this road with Data before. We've been down this road with Seven before. We've been down this road with the Doctor before. So if we're going to do it again, let's let it have some meaning. But we don't really have that here. What we have is fun. What we have is good execution. So it succeeds with fun and execution. But if I have to factor in the other things, the other sort of raison d'etre, I can't come up with one. So maybe it doesn't for me. Yeah.
Yep. There's not a lot that I'm going to add on to this because I'm really like on the same page with you. Like I would probably have, I don't know, more to say about the Doctor's arc, this continued pursuit of being more human than human, to quote Tyrell.
Nice. Or Rob Zombie. Yeah, exactly. Sure. Yeah.
Or, actually have, the ability to walk a few kilometers in someone else's shoes, But we really have put his arc in the last 7 seasons to the test before this. Right? We've put a lot of that to bed, especially just a few episodes ago with Author. That should have been not the penultimate, but that is the penultimate episode of the Doctor's journey.
It's the final way to wrap up his story.
Right? Yes. Before we get to the end. So, that it had so many interesting elements in terms of ethics, in terms of, rights and sentience and things of that nature that how much more are we going to talk about? And the answer is none more.
None more.
Why was this episode slotted here? And in doing so, does it actually affect the momentum of the series as a whole? For me, it's not a question of does this hold up or not. Like I said, yes, I think as a production, I think, the acting, et cetera, et cetera. We've said this before about season 7, that all the practical elements, physical elements, acting elements, music elements, all of these things that make a great production, they're there.
Yeah.
Now you push that aside and ask yourself, why is this the penultimate episode? Right? Again, I mentioned this before earlier, not just for season 7, but for Voyager as a series in total. This is the second to last episode of Voyager ever. No matter how good this episode is from it holds up for reasons standpoint, it's really hard to kind of accept this as being the lead in to the series finale. Now, saying that, we know that Voyager was tasked to be more of a bottle episode series, unlike where we were at the penultimate episode of Deep Space Nine.
Right.
Wow. I mean, it's really hard and it's almost unfair to compare the two, but that's where we are with Star Trek. Why was this chosen? It doesn't make any sense to me. And here's the thing. the prior episode to this, Homestead, was the perfect lead-in into Endgame. It starts the emotional journey saying goodbye to these characters with Neelix.
Right.
And then the way this is ordered, Homestead, then Renaissance Man, and finally Endgame, you have this, this kind of like this shedding, of like all of these different types of feelings that you have for the characters. You say goodbye to Neelix, and all of a sudden, no one even mentions him in the episode. Not once. It's as if this episode shouldn't even be here.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of like the problem with this. It takes everything that Homestead stood for that really should have led into Endgame. So like, I can't believe that. What are we going to do? Like, what's going to happen? Like,
yeah.
And it makes the consequence of saying goodbye to Neelix, which was already dubious at best, at the very end when they kind of say goodbye, you're like, well,
sure.
It means
sure.
It almost feels empty. It feels emotionless. It feels uncaring.
A slap in the face. It really is.
It does hurt as a fan. I'm not as big of a Voyager fan as I know so many people out there. Even I am personally insulted with the way that is unrolling right now. Now,
yeah.
Again, that being said, I do love seeing, Picardo mimic the crew. I love seeing the crew mimic Picardo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's all fun. But it just doesn't make any sense to me where it is as opposed to how it was made.
Yeah. Well, maybe it got made because there were really important morals, meanings, messages to pick apart here. Maybe that is why.
Lay it on me.
This episode. Okay. Let's see. What did I learn? Don't disobey the captain unless you have to. Treat every member of your crew the same way unless you don't. And rely on the help of others unless you don't do that either. Did I pretty much got all of those?
That's good. Check.
Use, like I said, the important word in the last segment, which is consequence. And my question here, what of consequence? We really don't get any. We don't at all. The only consequence is that Janeway feels bad for the Doctor because he has a SAD, and she says, come have coffee with me on the holodeck, and we're going to put our ranks aside and just be pals. I wish she had done that 3 or 4 seasons ago, or 5 or 6 seasons ago, when she was still struggling with the Doctor's sentience and his role in her crew, and they could have had a really interesting conversation. He could have told her all about his holographic family and some of the other interesting things that he has gone through. But I wonder, does this leave us with a bigger problem that Starfleet is unable to punish artificial intelligences like Data, like the Doctor? If we can't figure out if they have rights, then how do we know what to do with them if they behave in a way that is unacceptable within our human world?
Right.
And it's this kind of thing that leads to, a holographic revolt like we had, a couple of seasons ago on Voyager. So it leaves us with some really difficult questions that I think are not intended here by this episode, but I hate the fact that we don't really have a resolution. But as we know,
which kind of resolution?
Janeway might have some problems with resolutions. So is there a message here? Well, not really. There's sneaking around with the Doctor and just wondering who will figure out the game first. It is that kind of an episode first and foremost. And there's Janeway just being mostly helpless, and I feel like they're saving Janeway for the next episode in order to wrap up the whole series. And it's important, again, that she is in multiple situations ordering the Doctor to obey her orders, and then nothing comes of that. But if I had to put maybe a little more of a Star Trek button on this, I really do think that the Doctor is torn between something that we've revisited many times over in Trek, which is the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few, or in this case, the needs of the few or the one outweighing the needs of the many. Mm-hmm. His loyalty is an interesting place to explore, and his decision-making is an interesting place to explore. But the episode stopped before we got to that. Instead, we just have events and we don't really have an understanding or a follow-up to what that means. And what you said before about author being a much more satisfying way to wrap up the Doctor's arc, I think is spot on. Because if this had occurred way, way, way in the past, and we could then follow up now and say, oh, here's what it actually means. Here's what he learned from that. Great. But we don't get that here. So that's why my morals, meanings, messages are a little scattered, but I'm okay with that. I'm sticking by it. What about you, Norman?
Well, if I've learned anything, John, you'll always surprise me, no matter where we are in the show, because I'm going to take away Holographic Revolution as our album cover.
Oh, sure.
For this episode.
Yeah, I love that. Love that.
We haven't really learned anything new here. It's not that there aren't any morals here. Like you said, we just haven't learned any new morals or meanings or messages because at this stage of Voyager, and especially this being the second to last episode, if you haven't really picked up on the themes of the Doctor and the Doctor's arc, maybe it's too soon right now if you're a first-time viewer to rewatch the entire series or maybe watch the Doctor's arc because...
Right.
They're there, and we've talked about them ad nauseum, to the point where we've charted his growth and evolution, to the point where things are just a little overcooked now, right? You know that the story is baked. You know that the story is fully formed. You know that the story is done. You want to take it out of the oven, but you just are looking through the window and saying, you know what? If I leave it in for 5 more minutes, what's going to happen? Well, you get something that's, again, it's tough. It's a little tasteless because it's burnt, bitter, whatever and
I love these cooking metaphors. This is great. This is good.
Overdone. Now, there's a place for that. Not here, right? But if you want to look, spinning it on the Star Trek button, his growth has always been about responsibility. But the chart of it is more important. What does he learn? What does he not learn? What are the consequences of his actions? How are those consequences going to inform a sentient, at best, being from evolving further down the line, when he finally makes it to wherever they make it to, right? When is obedience justified? When does autonomy take precedence? That's sentience, right? But if you don't have consequences to your actions, then they're just actions. It's kind of like a timeless Star Trek story. Leadership means balancing risk, morality, and trust. Trust in yourself and trust with your crewmates, and your captain and the people involved. And it reminds us that every sentient being, either organic or holographic, has the capacity to act with courage and conscience when the consequences are at stake. Weighed and measured. In 2025, because we say, sometimes there's a holdup. Does it actually matter in modern times? Yeah, Renaissance Man lands because it asks us the questions that are important today. How do we use our knowledge responsibly? What do we do when we start waffling on that trust, when the stakes out there are so high? How do we navigate the pitfalls and the blind corners of uncertainty because we don't know what's wrong or what's right based on this information? These are legitimate questions. And it's kind of like, where's the Doctor? He falls into I know what I'm supposed to know, but I don't know any more than that. So where's the information going to take me based on what I download? It's a really just interesting and something that I think is just more in the public consciousness today. So questioning the status quo will always be at the core of Star Trek for me. I see that here, but I've seen it done better in other episodes about the Doctor, but I think it's still very Star Trek for me.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you would like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Endgame.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Tom Kozak, Mike Richards, Mike Schabel, and Paul Shadwell. The only reason the captain is authorizing a coffee date is because the doctor doesn't actually drink coffee. That means more coffee for the captain. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.